Grand Risings, y'all. Happy Black History Month, and welcome to Crushing 1L, a podcast about Benito Bowl. I'm Aaminah. I'm a 1L at UCLA Law, and I'm joined by Abhi, a 1L at Penn Law. Abhi, Grand Risings.
Grand Risings, Aaminah.
Yo, whoa. Just say hello.
Oh,
Easy.
hello. My bad. Hey, to me, every day is Black History Month, Aaminah.
Thank you.
And I love the Benito Bowl. That's my go-to order at Chipotle.
I'm not familiar with that one. I have to try that sometime.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
great. No, it is a Super Bowl, though. So we're recording this
Yeah.
Super Bowl weekend. So we don't know the version of us that is right now. We do not know who won.
Except that I do.
That's scary. Do you want to make a call? Do you want to just speculate and say who
No.
won?
I can't, because if I say the wrong thing and something bad happens, there are people who will come after me. So
I'm doing 34-17 Patriots.
okay.
Yeah, that's my call.
All right.
And it's gonna be a fun game. We don't know who wins yet, but the version of us that will be the version of us when this episode comes out will have known or will know who won. Anyway, Aaminah, I think if I'm not mistaken, you're not the biggest football fan.
You're correct. I think this might be the first time ever in my life I watch the Super Bowl. Like, I don't think I've ever watched the Super Bowl. I've definitely watched halftime performances. I don't think I've ever watched the game
Wow,
ever.
that's huge.
Yeah.
I am a sports fan, I would say. I'm not the kind of sports fan who, if a team loses, it's going to ruin my weekend. But I think I've probably seen every Super Bowl that I've been like conscious for. It's a big game. It's a culture.
Like,
Sorry.
do you have any teams that you're like, this is my team?
Well, so I grew up in Kansas City, and so
Yeah.
now the listeners are going to eviscerate me for being a Chiefs fan. But again, you don't control where your hometown is. That's just my hometown team. But yeah, I don't have a horse in this race for this game. I'm huge Drake May fan, huge Sam Darnold fan. I hope Jackson catches some passes. I hope that whoever Drake May can throw the ball to. I don't know anything about the Patriots offense, but huge Drake May fan. I'm excited for the game. It's gonna be a good game. What do you think the law school equivalent of the Super Bowl is?
I don't know. I feel like in terms of like energetically, the first thing that comes to mind is OCI, but I guess in terms of like competition, like, well, I feel like it's got to be. I think we were talking a bit about this, and I feel like you think it's mid-size versus big law, but I think it's got to be big law versus PI.
Oh, yeah. That like pretty much splits the law school in half.
Yeah.
Where, the people going to law firm recruiting versus the people going to whatever PI students do.
Yeah.
Uh,
Same
uh,
thing. Just career day. Same thing.
yeah. No, it's interesting. But you're right. There's not like competitions between law schools very often for anything. I think the one exception would be, or the exceptions would be mock trial, moot court, like those kinds of teams that
Yeah.
probably do compete. I don't know anything about mock trial and moot court, but for the competitive listeners out there, when you come to law school, you'll be on a moot court or a mock trial team if you want to be.
Yeah.
And I
I
think
mean,
those teams compete and travel
yeah,
to compete.
we had a moot court competition actually last week. From what I understand, it seems to me like similar to what we're doing this semester in LRW, which is like oral presentations, like kind of
Yeah.
talking about a certain case, being asked questions about it, or an area of case law. Again, not entirely sure, but yeah, there is moot court, there's mock trial, which is, as it sounds, mock trial. You can join a team. Like, actually, UCLA has a really distinguished mock trial team. So if that's something you're interested in, like, consider UCLA. We have a really,
Yeah.
really good mock trial team. But
100%.
yeah.
At Penn, we have something called the Kitty Cup, which, so obviously we have our also very distinguished mock trial and moot court team. Shout out to those guys. They rock and they work really hard. But at Penn, we have an intramural competition called the Kitty Cup, which is oral argument competition within the law school. And that's our Super Bowl. It happened a couple weeks ago. We filled our biggest auditorium with fans. We had like those heads, like the four finalists. We had like signs with their faces on them. We were cheering. It was crazy. We brought the Chief Justice from the Sixth Circuit in to be the judge of the competition. It was awesome. We were rooting for everybody. Everybody did a great job. So law schools sometimes have events within the law school that feel like a big deal. So those are fun. But then Uh, I think you're right though. I think like especially for 1Ls, recruiting seems to be the big thing. Whether that's PI versus big law, whether that's big law versus midsize, whether that's OCI itself as an event.
Yeah.
How's OCI going for you?
Uh, you know, uh, I so where to begin? Um, so I did. I'm like trying to remember if I've talked about where I am in the interview process at all, but OCI is interesting. Ours, so Abhi, you had OCI at the beginning of January. Ours is kind of like mid to end of February. And it's interesting, like I did my OCI applications. The way it worked is that we had to submit resumes and transcripts and then additional materials depending on what firm you were applying to like 40 firms. We had to bid, they call it bids. So we bid on 40 firms. Um, send out your materials and then you get matched with certain firms, like I guess firms review your materials and decide if they want to interview you or not. And so you get a like a match schedule, and like for us we have interviews on the 13th, the 20th, and the 27th, I believe, of February. um and like you just get like scheduled for a slot, like a 20-minute slot on one of those days. And that, so I'm using the word interview, but like I guess we'll talk a bit about jobs this episode, it sounds like. So I'll
It's
give
the
you a bit.
jobs episode.
It's the jobs episode. Well, it's the Beneath Table episode, but tangentially we'll talk about jobs because we have to. But yeah. So in terms of like how interviews work for law school and with law firms, you have it kind of works in segments. So you have a screener, which tends to be like a shorter version of an interview where you might be talking to one attorney, and like it's kind of just like them getting an intro to you and seeing like, okay, like is this a person that we want to like consider for hiring for this position? But it's not your actual interview, and it's not where you're gonna get your offer from. So you'll have your screener and it's short. Then you'll have a callback with big law firms or mid-sized law firms, which I'll talk a bit about as well. Um, you have a callback, which for me, like I had an interview and then like my callback was 2 hours. And in those 2 hours, I spoke with six attorneys for 20 minutes each. Abby, you can talk a bit about how you guys went as well. But so you're gonna have your callback, and those are hours, those are longer, and you meet with more attorneys from the firm. And then after your callback is typically when you're going to hear if you get an offer or a rejection. Um, yeah, so that's that. But with OCI, it seems to me like our school is starting with the screeners, which is interesting to me because on that, like some of the firms who were signed up for interview slots on OCI already were like, oh, actually, like we're pulling out because we've already filled this position. We had a couple firms do that, which again, like not to cause panic, there are still firms who are still doing OCI, but like do note that there were firms who have now filled the positions, and I anticipate that there will be more firms in the time between now, like when we got our matches and when the interviews are actually supposed to happen, that might also be like, we filled this position because again, they've been doing this process since November. So just something to be aware of. But yeah, I've been talking. Abby, how was the interview process for you? Like,
Yeah, I can offer maybe an alternative timeline too,
mhm,
where I wasn't really into the bid on 50 or 40, or our OCI is structured the same way. You bid on a bunch of
mhm,
firms. We kind of talked about this last week with Beth. The quantity method. I prefer the quality method. So I focused during the fall, during recruiting, on building relationships with 4 or 5 firms that I actually really wanted to work at. And then fortunately, I was able to just go through the direct application process, like you mentioned. That started in November. A lot of firms opened their direct apps in November. So I started doing screeners around Thanksgiving, and I was doing
mhm,
callbacks during like around finals time before Christmas. And so when my grades came out, and again, Penn, because our OCI date was so early, part of the reason that every school has different OCI dates, they all talk to each other. So, like for instance, Penn, if Penn scheduled OCI at the same time as UCLA, it would be a disaster, right? Because firms would have to be interviewing hundreds of students from across both schools. So all the top schools coordinate so that OCI occurs at different times. We just got lucky or unlucky, I don't know. We were the first slot this year, January 7th, 8th, and 9th. So because of that, they accelerated the way our grades came out. So our grades came out on January 2nd. So kudos to the professors who got the grading done, and kudos to the registrar's office who like got all that back end admin shit sorted to get everybody's grades out by January 2nd. Incredible achievement by the school. But that meant that we so for me, I was already in the process. And again, I was very fortunate to have like targeted and built relationships with 4 or 5 firms. So the screeners went well and then the callbacks went well. And so then I just sent my transcript when it came out to those 4 or 5 firms, and I started getting calls. That was a Friday, and so on the Monday I started getting phone calls, which is awesome, and I was very lucky that it worked out that way. But that if you're wondering, if you're like, why the heck are these firms filling up slots, right? They save slots for OCI at UCLA in February, but it's because they might have gotten direct apps over the winter with students that they really connected with, and so those spots are going. Again, like no cause for panic, but if you're Zero-L and you're thinking about your timeline, there's 2 ways to do this. You can kind of do it the institutionalized way, where you have a dedicated week or 2 of interviews and you have a bunch of institutional support, which is awesome. Or if you are, maybe this is riskier, but like if you're willing to like kind of take out a smaller bite of the apple or whatever and just focus on a couple firms, and then hopefully those work out for you. But I was fortunate. I kind of just didn't have to do OCI, which is huge. But Amina's right. The callback process, interesting. Sometimes it's like 6 to 8 half-hour interviews back to back to back, depending on how the firm structures it. So you're looking at like 3 to 4 hours, and this is like over Zoom or it's in person. I think both both were exhausting for me. So just I would just say be ready, build up your interview stamina. I will say though, it's not that bad because they are interesting people. Like these attorneys are really cool people. You do want to learn more about their work and how they got there. And you want to also, it's a 2-way interview. You're hoping to pick up vibes from people during the screener, during the callback, because you don't want to end up at the wrong place with the wrong culture. So that's kind of how interviews work. 2 paths to do them. The direct application process, a little bit more work up front during maybe a more hectic time of the year, but and it may be a bit riskier because you can't direct apply to 50 firms. Versus if you wait, you have the institutional support. You can do mock interviews with the career office. You can have that centralized location where you can apply to 30, 40, 50 firms, which also worked out really well for all the peers of mine that did the OCI process. So there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah. And I think too, like, as you were talking, I was thinking, like, you guys ask us a lot, like, what can we do in the summer to prepare for law school? And like, I don't think you really can do so much to prepare for law school, but I actually do think like you could like take the time over the summer because when you get into school, it's going to be hell in terms of your schedule. So like you could take the time over the summer to kind of like do the firm research of like, okay, like I mean, and like I hate to like advise this because like it's even attorneys acknowledge like you don't know what you are looking for, you don't know what you don't know, like because you haven't been in law school and you haven't experienced it. But like it's not going to get in my opinion, it's not really going to get any better in your first semester. Like the first semester is not going to teach you enough for you to be like, oh yeah, like I want to do XYZ and go here and there and like go to this firm. So like I think you might kind of be in like well suited to like in the summer start like thinking about what kind of firms you want to go to and like maybe start building those connections or start working to talk to those people because like yeah, like they'll bring them to the school and all that, and like you will get more exposure to firms like over the fall semester in terms of like who are some people I might want to talk to or whatever. Like definitely that will happen, but like you can still do it, like reach out before, especially if you have like your like law school email, like you could send an email from your law school email like, hey, like I'm going to XYZ Law School. I'd love to talk more about your practice area at this firm, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. And that might take off. Because I think, like, you're talking about the quality method. Like, I think that's great. And, like, would have loved to have done that approach. But, like, for me, I was so overwhelmed in the fall. Like, I couldn't handle that. So, like that pushed me into this like spring timeline. But yeah, like looking back, like maybe that's something you might want to consider starting in the summer. Like how can I like get in touch with attorneys and like start building those relationships before I'm like in this time warp of law school.
Yeah, and like to be super clear and to give you the credit you deserve. I mean, you're not the only one who was overwhelmed. Like
But yeah.
everybody was freaking overwhelmed, and I think that the firms and the law schools are hearing that. Like they're like, "Whoa, this timeline was kind of crazy." So I wouldn't be surprised if we had listeners that were starting this coming fall in 2026, and they have a completely different timeline than the timeline we had. I hope, honestly, I hope that
I
you guys
hope
have a different
too.
timeline. Yeah.
And it could be, but I wouldn't bet on it because the fact
Well,
that
don't
they,
bet on the best case, right? Bet on the worst
yeah,
case,
I
which
mean, like,
is it's going to be this early.
I wouldn't bet on it in the sense of like attorneys know now. They know it's horrible. And when you go in your interviews and you talk to attorneys, like they'll tell you, this is horrible. We hate this. This is not good. Like it's not beneficial for you. It's not beneficial for us. Like, but they're still doing it. So
They're still doing it, and they're filling up their seats, for like 2 or 3 years in advance, which is silly, but um,
yeah,
c'est la vie, it is what it is.
silly.
I think also like if you're not so zealous, I think I would be nervous to reach out to attorneys before I even started school. But if you're like gung ho, hell yeah, I support you.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
But I think something maybe lower key that somebody could do over the summer, if you know where you're going and you kind of have an idea of what practice area you're interested in or what kinds of firms you're interested in, you also reach out to students at the school
Mm,
you're going to. So go look up, like, for instance, if you're into entertainment law, the UCLA Entertainment Law Club probably has a website or some sort of webpage presence, and they probably list their leadership and they probably have emails. Email those people. The 2Ls and 3Ls have been such an enormously helpful resource during this process. They give you insights like, oh yeah, I'd spent a summer at this firm, thumbs up, thumbs down, right? Or I was in this club 1L year and it was worth it because I learned about entertainment law or intellectual property law or like whatever kind of law you're interested in. Reach out to students who are in those organizations. And that could be a great time to figure out, like, hey, what clubs do I want to target my first few weeks on campus so that I can be best positioned to build relationships with future entertainment lawyers, future IP lawyers, or current lawyers, because sometimes those clubs host like informational sessions. So, like, I know our IP group had some IP attorneys come. They came from the firm that I will be working at, and I did not know that this firm was so good at IP, and I didn't really even know anything about the firm until they visited, and that's the firm I'm
mhm,
working at. I had a different over the summer. I thought I wanted to work at a different kind of firm,
mhm.
and then as the semester progressed and as I met more attorneys, I changed my mind. And as I went through the recruiting process, I changed my mind, and I actually ultimately ended up with the firm that I'm going to now. So, yeah, start doing that research. Start letting it marinate, because then maybe it'll feel less rushed if you've
Yeah,
been letting it cook for weeks.
yeah. And I think that's really good advice. Like talking to attorneys might feel intimidating. That's true.
That'd be
And
scary.
I get, well, yeah, too, like as you said, like so much will change as you get into school. So like the note there is like don't try to jump the gun. Like you can't solve it before you get into law school. Like that's not
Yeah,
gonna happen. But like I think that note of like just let the thoughts start percolating in your mind and like start toying with that idea so that yeah, maybe I don't know, but maybe it might help with that, like, maybe it would have helped me with that feeling of overwhelm to have, like, kind of situated myself and like, "Oh, this is how it's what it's like to have a conversation with an attorney or a conversation with a student that, like" whatever it is, like, it may have been useful to me in that way, and it might be useful to you to, like, do that sort of prep work over the summer, but yeah.
I agree. Completely agree. And part of that prep work is kind of figuring out, like, what kind of firm are you even interested in? And that kind of
Mhm.
leads us pretty nicely into a listener question that we got from Bjork. So, Amina, why don't I read the question and then you chime in, because I think you have a little bit more information about this particular question than I do.
Yeah.
So Bjork asked, I'd be curious to hear more about mid-sized law firms that do private work. There's a lot of discussion around big law, public interest, starting your own practice. And those are like the traditional, this is me editorializing. Those are like the traditional three things we think of, right? It's like
Mhm.
fancy corporate attorney, not so fancy, like public interest attorney, and then like hanging your own shingle, like Rudy Baylor in The Rainmaker. But then back to the comment, but not as much about firms with like 50 to 150 attorneys, mid-sized firms. Are
Mhm.
firms of that size relatively rare? Are they still as competitive to get into? And is working at one considered a small step down from big law or a fundamentally different career path? Amina, you're considering a mid-sized firm. What do you think? Also, is that 50 to 150? I think mid-sized might be even bigger than that.
I
I think
think
mid-sized might be up to like 500.
50 feels a little small. I don't know what the upper limit of midsize. Hold on, let's find out.
Let's Google it.
Um Sorry.
My guess, I'm going to put my guess in. I think that mid-size can be anywhere from 50 to 500.
Yeah, 50 to 500. 50. Wow, 50 feels like a small for men, but okay.
Well, 50
Um,
people. I mean, think of a room with 50 people in it. That's a lot of people.
that's a party. But I digress.
I was right though. So it's 50 to 500
50 to
roughly?
500 is what Google says.
Nailed it.
Um, I okay. So are firms of that size rare? I don't think firms of that size are rare. Um, but I do think that they are competitive in so much that like it's a smaller pool of people. Like if you only have like 100 attorneys, 200 attorneys, whatever, like there's less entry points for new people to come in, I think. Whereas big law firms like 1,000 attorneys, whatever, like there's more room and leeway. And then like they're more of a traditional track. So I think there's more, again, like more entry points and more of a system set up towards sending summer associates to bigger law firms. So I think, yeah, in that way too, like mid-sized firms can be competitive because they are more they can be comparable to big law firms in terms of like the pay rate. Um but like less intense than a big law firm. So I think like they're more competitive in that they're like they might be more ideal for somebody to try and get into at the onset. Or like even like boutique law firms as well as kind of like in the same vein where it's like focusing on a specific practice area. Like I think boutique law firms are especially competitive to get into. Like I feel like boutiques often don't even hire straight out of law school. Like those are kind of things that you tend to lateral into. Um but yeah, I think they are competitive to get into mid-sized firms, like equally, if not more so than big law. Is it considered a step down from big law? I don't think it's a step down. I think it's just different. Like, I think when you frame it and step down, like you're kind of thinking about like moving throughout the legal industry, right? So it's like if I start at a mid-size, like will I be able to move into big law? And I don't think that's kind of like the direction that you go from mid-size to big law because I think what you're getting at a mid-sized firm is what you get from a big law firm, barring the size of the firm. Right. So, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just it's not like a triple A to big leagues. That's
Yeah.
not how it's just it's not vertical, it's horizontal. It's like pick choose your adventure. Like
Hmm.
they're all kind of just different options. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think like if you like, I say that to say like we have the term lateral, which is like to your point of horizontal. Like that's when you move in the legal industry, it's called lateraling. Um, but I don't think you really like lateral from mid-size to big firm. Like you can. I don't think it's impossible, surely, but you don't really lateral from mid-size to big law. So if you want to go big law, like and Abby, you were talking about this, like kind of the entry or interest points of going into big law is like getting big law training. Like it's the idea that like this is kind of like the best training grounds for you as a starting attorney. Of course, there's the pay rate, right? Like that, looking for
The
that
money's pretty good.
yeah, the big love paycheck, I can't lie. Like that is real. And then kind of just like the prestige of being in big law. Like those are all important considerations. However, like like I sorry. I kind
No,
of
it's really interesting. It's an interesting question because you have to ask yourself. I think Bjork has brought us to a really great discussion point, which is why does a law school graduate choose a certain path, right?
yeah.
The answer to that question is infinitely nuanced. People pick career paths or jobs at certain firms for geographic reasons, right?
Hmm.
So one thing Big Law has going for it is that you can pick a pretty well-known name brand firm and it might have offices across the country. So if
Hmm.
you go to law school in Southern California, but you want to work in New York City, you can recruit with like a big law firm down the street and they can just send you to New York because they have an office in New York. A mid-sized firm can't do that because the mid-sized firm is probably headquartered in LA and lives in LA and will always be in LA and every attorney that works there lives in LA, right?
Yeah.
So if you don't want the geographical flexibility, or in fact, you would prefer to actually be at an HQ, a company HQ in Southern California, where all of the attorneys are in Southern California, that's just a different decision. That's not a better or worse. That's just
Hmm.
a you want to work, you want the flexibility of working in New York versus you actually want to be headquartered in LA. So it's those kinds of decisions, geography, practice area, right? So, like you just mentioned, mid-sized firms, boutiques often specialize. Are you down to become a cold-blooded killer at one thing? Great. Go to a mid-sized firm that does one thing. Go to an entertainment law mid-sized firm that only does entertainment law. Go to a boutique law firm that only does intellectual property. You're going to get really good at that because that's all you're going to do. If you are less sure and you actually want to explore and you want to be a generalist, you can go to a big firm. They'll throw a bunch of different kinds of assignments at you during your first 1 to 4 years, and you're going to get a breadth of education as a junior attorney rather than a depth of education.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't better or worse. Those are just different. Those are just different decisions. So it's really interesting when you consider all of the things that go into picking a firm to work at or a legal organization to work at. It doesn't even have to be a firm. It all comes down to where do you want to work? What do you want to work in? How much money do you want to make? And I think those are the three that matter.
Yeah.
I just listed two, but
well, I mean, like those kind of three concepts, right? And like,
yeah.
again, like if you want to move around, like big law is probably going to be a better choice for you because it's going to give you more ability to move. But if you kind of know where you want to be, what you want to do, whatever, like mid-size might be more attractive to you because like the pay rate tends to be comparable to big law, if not as much. It's like relatively comparable in a way that like is fine for you to take on.
A lot of
Uh
mid-sized firms pay market.
yeah, a
And
lot of
when we say
mid-size
pay
firms in market.
market, when we say pay market, we mean generally that means the Cravath scale, sometimes called the Milbank scale. Um, and you can Google that. The dollar amount changes every year because they update it every year, but essentially the market rate is what all of the large law firms across the country kind of agree through, not agree because that would be collusion, but like kind of independently all arrive at agreeing
Mm-hmm.
at the price of an associate for every year that you advance as an associate. So you can Google Cravath scale, you can Google Milbank scale. But when we say a mid-sized firm might pay market, that means that for the first 2 to 4 years of being a junior associate, they may actually just match the Cravath scale. So you're working at a smaller firm, more targeted, more local, and more specific to the practice area that you want to work in. And you're making the same money as the guy at the big firm down the street who might be working 100 hours a week. I don't know. Well, not that you won't work 100 hours a week in the mid-sized
Yeah,
firm
not
though.
that you won't. You very well may. So it's just
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's just different. It's not like better or worse. It's just there are different things and like depending on what you want and how sure you are of what you want, like those are different ways to target those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would be remiss if I didn't. So I'm going to a big firm, but
Hmm.
I feel like I've picked a firm that has local vibes. Like I'm going to the headquarters in the city that they're headquartered in. They focus on kind of a few things, so it has mid-size vibes, but it has big law benefits. But I would be remiss if I didn't mention that for a lot of people at T20, T30 schools, big law is kind of the default.
Hmm.
It's arguably the easy thing to do just because the big law firms come and they do the most heavy recruiting. Like they show up en masse and they like start to do events and they essentially kind of pull you into their pipeline. There's also the most seats available at the big firms, right? Like
Hmm.
I mean, you just mentioned if your law firm has 1,000 attorneys and they may have turnover of like they might lose 100 attorneys every year just through natural attrition.
Hmm.
So they have 100 seats to fill nationwide. That's going to be a different recruiting process than the mid-sized firm that only has 100 attorneys and they may be looking for one person. And it's like, well, I don't know. I mean, that seems hard, right? That seems harder. But also on the other side, I keep hedging because it's actually difficult to decide anything. On the other hand, if it's a firm, like we just mentioned, in the practice area that you want to be in, the geographic area you want to be in, and you vibe really well with those 100 attorneys, you might be the one person they're looking for. So you
Right.
might actually have an easier time recruiting in that sense. So I do think the big law tends to be the default at a lot of schools because it's like the inertia option. Like if you don't have any preferences, you can kind of just let your body be taken by the river, the
Hmm.
river of big law. But if you have any preferences that aren't that, you have a lot of options. So you are by no means like stuck doing big law.
Yeah.
You can do mid-sized law, you could do PI, you could do small law. A lot of
Yeah.
people at Penn are doing small law. They're like, screw the big firms, screw the mid-sized firms because they act like big firms. They're going to like small plaintiffs firms, and it's
Yeah.
like groups of like 20 to 30 attorneys that, that just perpetuate lawsuits across the nation. But so maybe small law for you.
Yeah. It's just like, yeah, there's a lot of different, as you said, different ways to skin the cat. So
Yeah,
Mm.
more than one way for sure. Although these days, with midsize and boutiques paying market,
Yeah, I mean, it just really kind of depends on what you want. Like, I think it's a that geographic consideration is a big thing because, like, even that, like you were saying, like the mid-sized firm that I'm looking at is like it's just here in LA, right? I've been in LA my whole life. It's not like I'm not like, okay, well, I don't want to be in LA anymore. Like, I'm very much like, okay, yeah, like LA, but like I will be in LA then, and I will never leave. And that's not like not a thing I think about, but okay, that's fine with me because that's my life anyway. But yeah,
it's a life decision, capital L, capital D, and that's
yeah.
and that's and just give it the give that the weight and the space that it needs to be a real decision.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that kind of leads us nicely. Thanks, Bjork, for the question, and thanks always for your great commenter too. So appreciate you. We also got a question, Aaminah, from fellow demon teammate Jacob.
Hi, Jacob.
So I'll read the question, and then I think again you might have you're more in it right now, so you have the better
Oh,
answer.
okay. All
Um,
right.
so Jacob writes, "Hi, Abhi and Aaminah. Jacob from the demon team here. Hi, Jacob.
Hi, Jacob.
How different does a resume for a 1L or 2L summer position look like from a normal job resume? Is there a big difference or any at all?" Let's pause there. Do you have the answer?
Well, first and foremost, I think like your resumes for legal positions kind of are very similar to regular resumes. It's one page, you know. I think the thing that you're highlighting is just like depending on if you're recruiting big law, recruiting PI, whatever, you're using language that speaks to the skills that those careers want. But like other than that, it's just a resume.
It's just a resume. I would just the only thing I changed was I moved education back up because
Oh
I've been
yeah.
working for a
Yeah, yeah,
number of
yeah.
years, so my experience was at the top. But because we're in school again, move education back up to the top.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would highly recommend work with your Office of Career Strategy. They did a great job helping us draft and edit our resumes. So
100%. Send that thing in. 100%.
send it in. They're going to tear it up. They're going to make it better. It's super helpful. They're an unbiased third party that will just look at your resume. They don't know who you are,
Hmm.
and they just tear it up. It's awesome.
Hmm.
Back to his question. For a writing sample for applications, would you recommend using a writing assignment you made during your 1L class?
You have to. You
You
have
must.
to. You have to. You won't have like you won't be able to use like there's nothing else to use. Like you have to use what you make in LRW or your legal writing class, and you won't know how to do that prior to taking that class.
Yeah, you're not gonna have anything else. Even if you were a paralegal or a legal professional before law school, you will not be able to use any of the materials you created during your work
Hmm.
prior to law school in your application. They want to see how you are handling the legal writing class. Like that is your transcript is like how you did in school.
Hmm.
Your writing sample is how you're doing in the writing part of school. So
Hmm.
they want to see how you have progressed your writing in your 1L writing class and your 2L writing class when you ultimately apply as a 2L as well. You must use a writing assignment you made during law school. After 1L, you're gonna have other options, right? You might have a journal article or something. You might have a paper that you wrote for a different class. You might have more memos that you created throughout law school. But like during 1L, you really only have the 1L writing sample. So, um, back to his question. Is there
Yeah.
anything you can do to prepare one before law school?
No.
Yeah, it's just simply no. You can't do anything to prepare one before law school. I will say, kind of reading this generously and linking it back to the question about the resume, although I do know that these are in different paragraphs, Jacob. Um, you can clean up your resume before law school. And I think that kind of ties back to Amina's
Mm.
point of like, try to front load some of this work when you're going to be in the middle of class in the fall, or like it's going to be Thanksgiving and you're like outlining for finals because you have finals in 2 weeks. And then firms are like, send us your resume. You're going to be like, oh shit, like I need to make sure my resume is legible. And so if you do some of that stuff the summer before, you can work on your resume. You can work on your cover letter, maybe like just a rough outline of a cover letter. Although OCS, Office of Career Strategy, will help you with those things throughout the semester. But like if you have a better starting point from over the summer when you have more time and you have a better resume to start with, some of your edits that you're going to have to do during the semester are going to be easier. So I'm just going to read your question generously. Is there anything you can do to prepare before law school? Maybe on the resume, not on the writing assignment, unfortunately.
Yeah. Jacob, sounds like you're starting in the fall, which congratulations. But yeah, again, like as we've said many times, don't stress so much about preparing for law school. Like, hope that helps. Okay, and then for this week's legal drama review, not really a lot of legal drama, but I do have just like a personal life thing that we've talked about on this show about meal prepping and, you know, eating because it's important to fuel your brain. And I have received this breakfast casserole recipe, which I will link in the show notes. This thing is like, I think about her all the time. Like, it's amazing. She's so awesome. Like, so literally, like, you make this giant, like, breakfast casserole. It's like eggs, vegetables, potatoes, cheese, and it can be frozen for like months. And I have, like, last time I made it, I ate it for like over the course of 2 weeks. Like, it was awesome. I love it. I recommend it to everybody. Breakfast casserole. Check it out. 10 out of 10. That's that. Huge.
Huge. It looks really great. The pictures look great. So I'm excited to hear more
I
about the
mean,
casserole.
yeah, if you guys make it, let us know. Let us know how it goes because I think it's awesome. I'm obviously like a huge advocate for this breakfast casserole, but I want to know if you guys like it. So let me know.
Speaking of breakfast casserole, Coca-Cola, if you want to sponsor this podcast, let me know. No, that's awesome. I mean, you're the real legal drama is what you're eating for lunch. So,
Oh, well, that's not lunch. That's breakfast. For lunch, I made this week. I made this Persian minced beef dish my sister made for me once. Oh my God. The first night when I had it, or the first lunch I had it, like I was like, whoa, I didn't know I could cook like that. Like I shocked myself. It was so good. Also recommend that. Can't drop a link for that because it is one of those like cook with your heart type things, but feel for you.
yeah, it's like like just pour this is a spice bottle. You
Yeah.
just kind of eyeball it. Just pour
Yeah.
to your heart's content. Yeah, I love that. Cool. Yeah, let us know what you guys are meal prepping. I'm always looking for more meal prep like recipes and stuff. I kind of just default to like just like white rice and protein and a green thing in a meal prep container, which is like the most boring food of all time, but it's cheap and it gets the job done and it's macro, the hits and macros and stuff.
There you
So
go.
I'm boring.
That's okay.
Yeah. I think that's all we got today, dude.
That's all we got today.
Cool. Well, that's it for this episode of Crush 1.0. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, leave a review, or as always, you can share it with someone in your life thinking about law school. Maybe we can talk them out of it. If you have a question, you can always write into the pod. That's just crushing1l.com, crushing the number 1l, the letter L.com. Appreciate all the listeners who comment on YouTube and Spotify. That's probably the easiest way to do it. Thanks as always, Aaminah. Thanks for joining me today. And thank me for joining you today. And again, folks, enjoy your Black History Month. And
Yeah.
until next time, keep crushing.